And let me also share my screen. All right. Can you all see my screen? Okay. All right, let's see. Let me get into the course. And let me get the syllabus up and going. And we're going to be talking about the second assignment today. Let me open that up too. Okay. Syllabus, week 2, assignments. All right. All right, excellent. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Just going over some of the administrative parts here. We are getting started on the second week of the course. All right, so I'm sorry, the third week of the course. We completed week 1, week 2, where we focused mostly on HTML and CSS. And this week, we're going to get started introducing JavaScript and look for the remainder of the semester. Plus more HTML, more CSS, but more and more we're going to do programmatic stuff. So according to the syllabus, let's see, we just completed HTML, CSS, the first 2 weeks, I guess week and a half. And this week we're going to introduce JavaScript and ES6 and jQuery. But we're going to keep doing JavaScript for the remainder of the semester. The only time that we're going to kind of go easy on JavaScript perhaps is maybe when we get to databases and RESTful services. We're going to be doing some Java there. But most of everything is going to be lots and lots of JavaScript. So we're going to get started with some of the easy stuff today, and we'll progressively get more and more advanced. So we're going to talk about the second assignment today, and that's going to be due on Wednesday, February 10th, when we'll introduce the third assignment. And this assignment number 2, will be focused on JavaScript. And so remember, we give you a lot of source code, a lot of startup code that is focused on the particular technology that is being introduced that particular week. And we assume that you can take on a little more on your own some of the topics that we covered the previous weeks, right? So this week will be heavily on JavaScript, a little less on HTML and CSS. Nevertheless, we will be covering some more topics and techniques in HTML and CSS, but a lot of the focus will be on JavaScript. Let's see, the quizzes, there will be a quiz next Monday, so a week from today, about quizzes. So I know that I had mentioned earlier that my intention was to run the quizzes during lecture time. And I think I'm going to backtrack on that since it looks like a lot of you are working, can't make it during lecture time, and also are in other time zones that would make it even harder. Some of you are overseas. So what I'm going to do for the quizzes, I'm just going to open up the quiz for 48 hours. So it'll be available on Monday, early Monday, it'll be available all throughout Monday, and then again on Tuesday, right? So you'll have, midnight from Sunday midnight till Sunday midnight to Monday midnight, and then again till Tuesday at midnight. So I think you should have plenty of time for you to have time to take the quiz. They are timed. They will be 30, 40-minute long quizzes, and it's about 5-6 questions. So you should be plenty of time to take the quizzes. They are open book, open notes. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the slides, with the material, with the lectures, with the videos, and know where things are, so you can take the quiz for that when it's scheduled. Let's see, a couple questions. All right, awesome. Can I ask what type of questions? So most of the questions will be multiple choice and fill in the blanks. The fill in the blanks typically are complete a piece of code, and where we give you a snippet of code and we ask you to fill in the blanks so that the code does something. Some of them are puzzles, where we have jumbled up the names of the variables, the name of the function, so you don't really know what it does until you start running it, right, in your head. And once you run it, then you realize what's it's doing, right? And then you can fill in the blanks. If we give all the correct name variables, it would be obvious what it does. But we want you to be able to evaluate whether you understand what's going on, right, without leaning on some you guessing at it. Got it. Okay. All right. So let's see. Yeah. So we're going to focus on JavaScript today. Let's see. Today there's the first assignment is due at midnight. On Heroku repository has a tag, right? And the tag, I believe, should be assignment 1, so that the TAs will know what to grade. Okay. Yeah, assignment 1. That's the tag that we're suggesting that you use. Okay. Let's present the second assignment. See, any questions before we get started? Any tips on the submission using Heroku? It's a little confusing. Any tips on the submission using Heroku? So the idea is that if you so let me go to Heroku. If you have an application deployed on Heroku, let's see, say I go here. Oh, that one's not running. I haven't been here in a while. Let's see, any of these course manager tests? 2300, 4500, React. Let's see if any of these are open. The server was sleeping, so it might take a while for it to boot up again. So the URL for you that you visit to view your application running on the website, that URL, we need that URL so that TAs can visit your website on Heroku, running on Heroku. And while that's up and coming, we also need the repository. So if you go to Git and you visit any of the repositories, and so we need this URL, that URL to the repository, and we need this URL, the URL that goes to your Heroku application. Right, so this is useful for the TAs to be able to go and take a look at your project running on Heroku. Okay.
Hey, Professor.
Yes.
The rubric said that the Heroku was optional on Canvas.
Oh, okay.
I just don't know if that's going to confuse some people.
Oh, I see. Okay, that might be confusing, right? All right, so that's my fault. So if you have not deployed to Heroku, then you won't be penalized. But my intention was for you to have Heroku deployed on Heroku. but I see how that might be confusing. Okay, so we won't penalize you if you have not deployed it to Heroku, but yes, ideally you would have it on Heroku. Thank you.
Professor, could I just ask one other question?
Yes, please.
I already made my submission. I was just wondering, like, there's one thing that I was like getting fixed up on. I actually just like put in like a little bit of JavaScript to show the alert
Yep.
that like a profile got updated. I don't know if a TA is going to miss that if they don't hit update now. And then, you know what I mean?
So you can, are you saying that with your new update, it's not going to work?
No, it's going to work. It's just that I realized afterwards that it actually should have been a static message at the top that just says profile updated. But mine, you actually need to click the button and then the alert comes up.
Right. So, okay. So the TAs are going to
resubmit?
grade, the TAs are going to grade whatever you tag.
Right.
And so if anything that you add afterwards, right, it's.
Yeah, so that was included in the tag.
Oh, okay.
Should I resubmit and just have it be static so that way they know that the alert is in there? I don't know. It's kind of a small detail, but
yeah. I don't want to get into back and forth saying, oh, but you know, I did do it, but you didn't click here, blah blah blah, and everybody get muddled.
All right, yeah, I'll just go exactly by what the rubric shows.
Yeah. You mean paste our links in the comment? Yes, please paste the links in the comment area. I think there's a text entry. I think there's 3 things that you can submit, either URL or text entry or something else. And you can go to text entry and you can paste the URLs there. All right, excellent. All right. All right, so let's take a look at the second assignment. Let's see another question in the chat. Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's take a look at the second assignment. So in this second assignment, we are going to introduce JavaScript as the programming language of the web. So JavaScript was added as a to browsers so that you can code what should the browser do. Right? You can write programs in JavaScript so that you can program the browser to do certain things. Right? As you move your mouse, as you click buttons or you highlight. Right? Every time you make or you type, anytime you make an event by clicking a button or pressing your keyboard, the browser can respond. Okay. And the way what the JavaScript program can do is manipulate the DOM, the document object model. So for instance, right, if I take a look at if I inspect this document, right, we can see the elements on the screen. Right, if I go here and start highlighting, right, that's the whole body, and that's there's a div here. There's a nav bar on the left. See that nav bar on the left? Then it's on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, let's see, we can have these. Okay, so left layout column. So this looks like this div is the left-hand side. See that? See it over there? If I open it up, right, there's a content in here. There's this nav, and there's this UL that looks like a list of all these sections. See that? And I can, for instance, manually, I can highlight this and do a delete, and it's gone. See that? The UI changes immediately. So this over here on the elements, this is an object. It's called the DOM, right? It's an in-memory representation of the HTML and the CSS that the browser downloads, right? And then it builds this object model, right, to render whatever's on the screen. And whatever you do to the DOM, it immediately reflects on the user interface, right? So for instance, here that's a hyperlink. And right now it says syllabus. See that? So I can change that. I can change it to say something else. And as I do that, notice that it changes immediately in the user interface. And right now I'm doing this manually. And if I refresh, right, all my changes go away. Right. So I haven't actually modified the document, the HTML document. I have only modified the DOM, right, the in-memory representation of this document. And I did it manually, but we can certainly do it programmatically. We can use JavaScript to manipulate this, right? So that instead of this doing it myself manually, right, I can programmatically add content. I can append new line items. I can delete elements. I can change the class. I can change the hyperlinks. I can create new elements in here. I can do all sorts of things. So that's what we're going to be learning how to do with JavaScript, right? And so that we can dynamically generate this, right? So that we could query the database in a server and say, hey, give me all the modules, right? So that I can then iterate and then render the each module here. And then inside of each module, I want to know what I can query the database to know what are all the items inside of a particular week, right? And when I get that data, I can then fill in and dynamically generate this, right? All in the browser, right? As opposed to doing this on the server, right? On the server, it can either be static, right? Or it can compute what that static HTML should be like, right? You can generate an HTML dynamically and then send it to the browser, and the browser would interpret it as being static, right? And it would just create the DOM and then render it. So we want to learn how we can dynamically retrieve, manipulate this using JavaScript. Okay, so to explore on how to do this, this assignment number 2, introduces JavaScript and introduces jQuery. Right, jQuery is a JavaScript library that makes it deals with the issue that in the late 90s, early 21st century, there was well, there still is, but there was a lot of competition on who was going to dominate the browser, and everybody who got into this race, the side effect was that the JavaScript language suffered how do you say, a break, or how do you call it when it gets splinter? Yeah, I guess it created many different versions, not only within a particular vendor, right? Whether it was Chrome or from Google, or IE from Microsoft, or Mozilla, or Safari, or Firefox, Netscape, right? And not only there were different versions as it evolved in the same browser, but also amongst competitors, right? And each one was kind of pulling their way. Some of them were following the spec, but some of them felt that the spec was too slow in incorporating new technologies and new techniques and new ways of building websites. And so some of these vendors, in particular Microsoft, they started creating their own version of JavaScript, right? And so this created a big problem for developers, that we as developers, we don't know how, we develop one single HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, but we can't guarantee who is going to come and visit our pages, right? We don't know if you're coming with Chrome or Firefox or, God forbid, IE, and so we had to write our code in such a way that it was able to adapt to any number of browsers, which became a nightmare to maintain, right? All the code tended to now be splintered into lots of if else, lots of switch statements, right? If it's Safari and if it's this version, then do this. If it's Chrome and it's this version, then do that, right? And it was just a mess. And jQuery introduced the mechanism that says, hey, you know what? Forget about it. Don't do that. Instead, use my library, my JavaScript library, and we will handle all that, right? You just call our functions, and we will handle what version, what vendor, and convert it into commands that are valid and applicable to those vendors and those versions. And the behavior will be the same across all browsers. It'll behave the same way, and we'll deal with that. Okay, so today you don't typically find folks writing JavaScript in bare bones. They'll typically use some library that makes it easier to write these kinds of things. Okay, so we'll introduce JavaScript, but we will be using libraries to help on the way. Okay, all right. So what are we building? So this week we're building the following. We're going to build this table right here. Okay, and this table is going to allow a system administrator to manage users. Create new users. They're going to be able to type users and then click a plus, and that adds a new user. It allows them to edit an existing user. It allows them to remove a user. Or if they're editing a user, they can change their values, right? And then say okay, and then saves it back. Now this is different than the sign up page, right? The sign up page allows folks outside of the organization to register themselves with our website, right? Whereas this is so the sign up page is outward facing. It faces outward from our organization, from the whiteboard application, whereas this user administration faces inward, right? So this would be a system administrator who has access to all the users, right? And he can change anything about any user, right? He can remove users, he can add users, he can edit users. So he can do everything. So a system administrator would use this. It doesn't need to be responsive, right? So as you modify, as you make it bigger, smaller, doesn't change. Again, this is for a system administrator that doesn't really care about responsiveness. The architecture is going to be as follows. The user is going to ask for this main page, this HTML page, and the HTML page is going to be downloaded from your Spring Boot Java server, the one you just deployed to Heroku. Okay, it's going to come down. The browser is going to parse it. It's going to parse the HTML, and that HTML is going to reference other resources, right? It's going to reference a CSS file. It's going to reference a JavaScript file. So the browser is going to go back to your Spring Boot Java server. It's going to download the CSS, download the JavaScript, right, down to the browser. Okay, and it's going to take all that and it's going to render, and it's going to create a DOM so that it can create it for the user create the user interface. And then this JavaScript, right, which is going to be a controller, it's going to run. The browser is going to execute. It's going to execute it. And what this application that you're going to write is going to go out to. It's going to use a local library of its own that you're going to write. So that it's going to generate an HTTP request back to a server called a generic server, right? So this is a server that I'm providing, right? That you're going to use to retrieve data, to send data, to delete data, to update data. So this server I'm providing, and in a couple of weeks you'll learn how to create your own. But for now, I'm providing a server for you, a data server, and you're going to ask for users, right? You're going to ask for users. The server is going to come back to you with an array of users formatted in JSON, in JavaScript object notation, an array of objects, and you're going to parse that, right? It's going to come back to your controller. The controller is going to iterate over that array, and it's going to programmatically manipulate the DOM, right? Just like we're doing here, that we're looking at the LIs here, and I can manipulate these manually. Well, your assignment is going to programmatically edit a table, right? It's going to add rows, it's going to delete rows, right? And then it's going to render and show you the end result to the actor. Make sense? So the three files that you are responsible for are these. This is the main HTML page, right? That's going to render this table, right? It's going to have all these buttons and this input fields and the table and the rows and the columns. Okay, so that's the HTML page. Your code, most of your code is going to live here in a controller. Okay, so the controller, so this is following a design pattern, very popular amongst web developers, and which is called the model view controller design pattern, right? And in that design pattern, we think about applications in 3 distinct buckets. Okay, and each bucket is responsible for something very specific in the application. Okay, so this HTML page plays the role of the view in a model view controller design pattern. Right, a good name for this instead of template might be view, right? But I'm gonna leave it as template. But a good alternative might be a view. It's playing the role of the view, and the role of the view is to present some user interface for a human being, right? It's meant to look pretty. It's meant to look organized and have nice and white spaces, and provide buttons that I can click and input fields where I can type. It's basically meant for humans, the human eye, to look at it and then interact with their meaty fingers. Okay, and as they that's their responsibility, right? To look pretty. They don't know anything about the data model. They don't even know what they're rendering. Okay, they're dumb. The logic, most of the logic lives in the controller. The controller is responsible for managing all the events that the user generates. So as we type, as we click, as we drag, as we interact with the user interface, we generate a stream of events, right? And this stream of events is consumed by the controller. The controller looks at all these events, whenever you click a button, whenever you press a key, right? It takes all these events and makes sense out of them, right? It says, okay, they just clicked on delete user. Okay, well, I need to translate that into a change in memory about this user being removed. Okay, and so it changes this model, or asks somebody to change this model, and then once the model has modified that this user no longer exists in the array, it then tells the view to re-render, okay, to re-update itself, right, so that it represents now a new set of data. Okay, something on the chat. An MVC model represents the backend data status saved. Yes, exactly. Now, you're not going to be responsible for saving the state and the model, right? For that, I am going to provide the backend, right? I'm going to provide this generic server, right? You are only going to be responsible for the control part, for the view part, right? And the service part, right? We'll talk about the service in a minute, right? So you're responsible for rendering the content, for handling all the events, and passing it to the backend, to a model that is going to be updated and maintaining the state of the application for you. That part, I'm handling it, right? I'm providing that part. I am going to provide you the M in the MVC. You're gonna implement the V and the C. Okay. Now the M, the model, represented by the generic server that I am giving you, right? This generic server that I'm giving you. The way you talk to it is through this service, right? This service file. And so the service file is also another design pattern, just like MVC is a good practice design pattern. The service is also a good practice, right? And basically, the practice is that whenever there are mechanisms of communicating using either HTTP or some kind of network, or with a database, it's a good practice to encapsulate all that logic inside a modular, reusable component. Okay, and that's exactly what the service is doing here. It's going to encapsulate all the mechanisms that we need for communicating. This communication right here between the controller and the server, right? It's going to be handled and implemented by the service. See this service? This is the user admin service client, right? So its responsibility is to be able to talk HTTP, right? Because this connection between the client here and the server is HTTP, right? So it needs to know what cookies are, what headers are, what HTTP bodies are. It needs to be able to package all that into an HTTP request, right? And send it over, serialize it into an HTTP, a serialized HTTP request, right? Send it over across to the server. The server's going to handle it. That's magic. You don't know what's happening there. I will explain to you what the results is, but not the actual implementation. And eventually, it's going to respond with HTTP, and an HTTP response, which is going to include the data embedded in an HTTP body, right? So the client here, this user admin service client, is responsible for unwrapping that request, right, and providing that data then to the controller, and the controller can then, maybe massage it a little bit and send it over to and manipulate the DOM. Okay. So yeah, so you're gonna responsible for building these three things. Now, obviously, I'm gonna give you most of the code. I'm not gonna do the assignment for you, but I'm gonna implement the same exact thing, but for something else, right? I'm going to work with courses. I'm going to create courses, delete courses, update courses, all that good stuff, right? And you are welcome to use that as an example on how you would then implement the users, right? So I'm gonna show you how to implement it for courses. You then can apply it for users. Okay. All right. So here we do give you the beginnings of this page here. How to get started. We'll give you the header so you can download, Bootstrap. You can download, jQuery, Font Awesome. You can download all those good things, and the headers, and then the tables down here. So here's an example source code. Here's the headers. Downloading Bootstrap. Is this the latest Bootstrap? Let me see. Bootstrap CDN. Let me see. If it's the latest. Sort of. Let me update that. This is the HTTP, so let me just paste that. Okay, that's a little bit newer. Also, Font Awesome. I don't believe that's the newest Font Awesome, so I'm going to go to get Font Awesome. And from Font Awesome, Font Awesome, let's get the CDN. So let me copy that too. So this is the very latest Font Awesome. Let me copy that. So I paste it in here. Font Awesome, let me paste it right there. There we go. That is now the latest Font Awesome. Very good. I think, is that the latest jQuery? Let me see. jQuery CDN. And let's see, the latest uncompressed, minified jQuery. I think this is, okay, there it is, 3.1. Let me just copy that. Copy. And let's paste it right there. There we go. Now it's the latest. All right, excellent. Okay, so you're gonna get started with that. Load the Bootstrap, load the Font Awesome, load the latest jQuery. If you're gonna style anything, you should for your web application for your page. Then you can override the styles here in the user admin and in the same folder. Down here you have a couple of scripts. One of them is going to be the service client. This is the one who's responsible for talking to the server, which you're going to build. And locally, you're going to have the controller who's going to be responsible for receiving all the events, right, and manipulating the DOM in the view. Okay, so you're going to write these two as well. Let's see. Then here we have a couple of tables on how to get started with the table. These are the headings at the top: username, password, first, last name, and so on and so forth. Then another row with some input fields, right? With notice the naming convention that fields have the ID with FLD at the end. Okay. Also, here we have a couple of classes. These are optional, but I'm going to be using them for my own implementation, which I'm going to demonstrate. But you can create your own styles, your own classes. Classes are not only for styling purposes, right? It doesn't mean that because it has a class associated with it, it means that there's going to be some styling of the background, the foreground. It doesn't mean that. It can also mean that we're using jQuery or JavaScript to be able to refer to an element on the page, on the screen, using that class, right? Or using the ID, right? And just like you can use CSS to refer to different parts of the document through classes and IDs, jQuery can do the same thing. It can look and says, grab me the row, right, whose class is web form. Go fetch that for me, right? Or fetch me the input field whose ID is username field, right? So that's what's useful for the classes and the IDs, right? So that's the form. The form has a couple of input fields. It has one drop down, right, and has a couple of buttons at the bottom, on the right hand side. Okay. Also, float. I think float right. Okay, I think that was for the old Bootstrap. I now think it's called poll right. Okay, so then we have the template here, right? The template for the body, right, that represents the rows of each one of the users, right? And what we're going to do is that we're going to create a table row that we're going to use as a template, right? So that we're going to be able to do from jQuery, from JavaScript, we're going to be able to refer to this table row and then clone it, right? So that we're going to start off with an array of users, and as we iterate over the users, right, we're going to clone this tr, right, and then we're going to append it at the bottom, at the end of the t body. Right? So we're going to append, copy paste these table rows, one per user, right? And then we're going to have to go in, and then for each one of these table rows of table data, we're going to have to manipulate, right, or replace the username and the password and the first name and last name, blah, 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 right? For each one of these, for each one of the actual users, okay? Also these buttons, we're gonna have to bind them so that when you click on them, right, something happens. Like for instance, if you click on the remove, right, we wanna be able to remove the user. If you click on edit, right, we want to copy that user information into the form so that you can edit the form and then update. If you click on OK, right, it updates it on the server. All right, so that's where we're building. Also remember to commit all your work. Any styling, please include it in the user admin CSS, client CSS. What else? Yeah, user controller. Okay, so in the controller, the controller is going to be responsible for handling all your clicks, all your typing, blah blah blah, right? And it's going to be implemented as follows, right? It's going to declare a couple of variables at the top, right? Some of these variables are going to be bound to some of the input fields, right? Those input fields declared in the HTML, well, we're going to bind them to local variables. Also, some of the buttons, we're also going to bind them to local variables here. Other fields, I guess this should be above like that. Yeah, and these are the buttons. We're also going to bind different other variables that we need to interact with the DOM. Okay. We're also going to create an instance of the service client, right? This is the one who's going to be talking HTTP to the server. we're going to create an instance of it so that we can use it locally to then send commands to the server, right? So when you create a user, we want to post the data to the server. When you want to retrieve all the users, we want to do a get, right, to retrieve all the users from the server. We want to delete, right? We're going to send a delete message to the server to delete it from the server, right? So that's going to be all in user service. Now, locally on our in here, we want to be able to initialize this component, this controller, and we're going to do that in the function main. So main is going to set everything up, right? It's going to talk to the HTML. It's going to bind all the variables. It's going to set it up. It's going to set up the form, right? All the event handlers, right? And then these are the event handlers. So as you click on the different buttons, right, creating, on the plus sign, we're going to call the create user. If you click on the delete, we're going to call them the delete user. If you click on the pencil, we're going to click on the select user. When you click on the OK on the checkbox, we're going to call the update user, right? And these are some functional, some functions that might be useful to you. For instance, the iterating over the array of users, right, and the actual rendering of the users on the table, we're gonna encapsulate that in this function, render users, right? That you can pass it an array of users, right, and then it will iterate over those users for rendering on the screen. You might need these functions, but maybe not, right? So I'm making them optional. These are, if you have to go fetch all these users from the server, or if you have to fetch a particular user by their ID. These might be useful for you, but they're optional. I document each one of these functions. For the client, for the service client, this is going to encapsulate the communication between our browser code, right, the JavaScript running on the browser, and our server running halfway across the world, right? So that communication is going to be through HTTP, and the URL that to communicate has this pattern. Okay, so it's a web dev generic server heroku.com/API followed by your, not mine, not your colleagues, but your, right? Your NEUID, and so I need you to use your NEUID here, so that all the data from one person or the other, right, is distinct, right? So your data will be different than somebody else's data. Okay, this really can be anything. It doesn't need to be your NEUID. Any string that is unique to you. Okay, if you want to use your phone number, if you want to use your email, or if you want to use your social security number, I don't care what you use. But it should be something that is unique to you, right? So that you're not meddling with anybody else's data, okay? It could be your username, right? Anything that is unique to you. Is it okay to add jQuery plugins to our project? Yes, of course. Definitely. All right, so what this function is doing is creating several functions here, so that they're part of the class. This is like a constructor, and we're adding the functions that are declared below. We're adding them as instances of this class. Okay, so all these create users are these functions down here. See these functions? So these functions are going to use this URL to talk to the server, so that they're going to, for instance, this one's going to post, is going to send the user object, embedded inside of the body. Right, it's going to send it as a JSON object, so that the server is going to receive it, and the server is going to process it and store it in a remote database. Okay, so here are the description of the functions, and then internally they use the following. They use the post. So the create user uses a post. The find all users uses the get. Retrieving an individual user uses this URL pattern. Put is for updating, and delete is for removing. All right, so this is following a design pattern, or I would say a nomenclature called RESTful services, RESTful web services. Okay, it's a very common pattern in industry. It's very well accepted. is widely used, and so I'm introducing it here. I have built a RESTful service. At some point, in a couple of weeks, you'll get to implement your own, right? Now, again, the API pattern is that it starts with API, your NUID or something unique, whatever it's unique to you, /users, right? So notice that they all end with either /users or /user ID, right? /users is for operations that entail all users, right? So post to this means I'm going to add a single user to all the users. This one is retrieving all the users. This is retrieving a unique user, one only user if you know their user ID. Or this one's updating a specific user if you know their ID. And this one's deleting a single user if you know their primary key. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to get started. I'm going to demonstrate how you would go about doing all this. Again, I'm not going to use users. I'm going to use courses, and then you can go on and use that for your own purposes for implementing users. Okay. All right. Any questions before we get started? All right, let's get going. So I'm going to do all the work in a directory called course list. And I'm going to implement an HTML document in there. I'm going to call it course list.html. And in here, just to make sure that we are in the right place, I'm going to say course list, and I'm going to tie it to the index page, right? Making sure that we are up and going, right? So let's see. So let's connect it to course list and course lists. Okay. And this will be course list. Let's run this. And let's navigate there. Localhost 8080. And if I click on course lists, there we go. So we're in the right place. Okay, everybody good? All right, so I'm going to copy a couple of things that are very convenient here that we give you. In particular, I like the heading part, right? The head right there. So I'm going to copy all these links and these scripts. Copy that. I'm going to bring them over. I'm going to copy it into my HTML because it has some very convenient things. So I'm going to paste that. Let's see what we got. So we got the style sheet for Bootstrap. That's good. I like that. We have font awesome. Excellent. This CSS I don't have yet, so I'm just going to remove it for now. And I don't have the service client just yet. And so I'm going to comment that out. And I don't have the controller yet. Right. So I'm not going to do that yet. Okay. All right. So let's refresh. All right. Okay. So it looks like we do have Bootstrap. Right. So let's add some margins on either side. So I'm going to add a class. This is a Bootstrap class called container fluid, which basically what it does is just adds some margins on all around the document, right? So it's not flush with the content, and it's not responsive, right? So it's just a simple margin on either side. Okay. Then we can create some of the tables that we gave you, right? I think it looks something like this. Here's the table. It had the T head, right? And it had the T body, right? And the T head had a row, and it had a header at the top with the columns that we want to edit for a particular user, or in this case, a course, right? So let's see, what can we edit for a course? Well, we can edit the title. Okay, maybe how many seats it has, and maybe the semester that it's playing, either spring, fall, or summer. Okay, and let's see, maybe even the section. right? So there could be the same course, but multiple sections, okay? All right, excellent. Then maybe in the same header, we can make another table row. And here we can have the form that we can edit, right? We can edit the title with an input. We can edit the section also with an input, the seats maybe also with an input, and the semester with a drop down, right? So this might be a select, right? With the select here with a couple of options, and the option might be spring, might be summer, and fall. Okay. All right, so let's see what this looks like. Let's refresh. Okay, this is what we got so far, right? Not very pretty. All right, so one of the things that we might do here is start painting it with some of the classes from Bootstrap, right? I know Bootstrap has a nice styling for the table, right? So we can add the class table. That's a Bootstrap class, which adds some nice borders, some nice lines and whatnot, right? We can also style these input fields. They look pretty ugly, right? So let's do that. So this might be, class form control. Form control is a nice style that makes it look a little more professional, and we can apply it to each one of the input fields. Okay, so that looks a little better. That looks a little prettier. So the title should be text, and the input field, I believe by default, is text. So we're not going to do anything there. The section I think it's also text, so I'm going to leave it alone. The seats, probably that should be numeric, right? So we're going to say the type is number. So now notice that it's number, and notice that it doesn't allow me to type text. It only allows me to type numbers. See that? It also adds these up and down for each one of these input fields. Okay, excellent. What else? We also might want some buttons at on the right-hand side, one for creating a new course, the other one for updating a course. So let's add buttons. New th and a new table head. In a new table head, let's add a couple buttons. Now these buttons could be buttons, or it could be icons, or it could be hyperlinks, right? I'm going to use buttons, but feel free to change it to anything you need to make it look what it's supposed to look, right? So this is, I either can create a new course or I can update a course. Okay, so there, here's a cool couple buttons. Notice that over here, this kind of looks empty, and that's probably because down below we use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 headings, but here we only have 4, right? So it looks like we're going to need a couple more. And wait, how many we have? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we just need one more, and we'll leave it empty so that it matches. Perfect. Okay, we know how many columns we got. Perfect. All right, excellent. So later we can have in the table body we can have actual data. So we can have maybe a table row, right? And in that table row we can have a couple columns with TD, table data, right, of a couple courses, CS4550, and this would be maybe section 03, and it was the spring, and what else we want here? Spring, fall, blah, blah, blah. Oh, section, title, section, seats. Okay, seats. So we need seats. So 23 seats. There we go. 23 seats and the fall on this and the let's see if it makes sense. So title, section, seats, right, and semester. Perfect. Right. We can add just a couple more just to see how it looks. There we go. So we got 4 of these. Oh, we forgot to put buttons on each one of these. Right. So let's do that. Let's do undo. And so let's add an additional table data, and let's add a couple buttons here, right? So this might be a delete button so that we can delete the course, and another button so that we can select the course, right? Like edit the course, okay? There we go. So we have that. And now we can copy that again. So copy that table row, and we can just paste it a couple of times just to see how it looks. There we go. Right now it's completely static, not dynamic at all. Okay. All right. So let's see. What can we do? All right. So what I'd like to be able to introduce to you is what can you do with jQuery, right? Now I invite you all to go to the jQuery website and read up on their application, right? There's way too much to be able to go through all of it. We're only going to cover, not even like 2% of the whole library, right? We're going to cover some of the most common things that you could possibly do with the library, but there's just way too much. I mean, we could do a whole course on jQuery, right? So we're going to do the absolute minimum, right, to make you proficient enough, right, and curious enough to go and explore more on your own, right? But it's going to be fairly useful. You could do a lot of things with what we're going to learn here. Okay, but again, as the library is quite extensive, right? Plus, they have the jQuery plugins, right, and some of the jQuery UI library, which are also very powerful and very interesting, which I also encourage you to take a look at that, right? But in particular, at least jQuery, you should become fairly familiar with it, or at least what it is. Okay, so let's see. So here's jQuery, very good, very perfect. And now here's our admin user controller. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to create my own controller. I'm going to put it here at the bottom, right? I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to create a new file in my course list, and I'm going to call it. It's going to be a JavaScript file. It's going to be called course list.js. Oops, got too many periods. Let's refactor that. Okay, and here's going to be the simplest JavaScript program ever, right? We're just going to do an alert, welcome to JavaScript. Okay, all right, that's the simplest JavaScript program. And here we're gonna load it. We're gonna say script, and we're gonna tell you where the source is, and the source is course list.js, and that's it. Right? Notice that it has to have the closing tag, right? It cannot be slash, right? It needs to have the closing tag. Even if it's empty, you need that closing tag, right? So slash here won't do. You have to have the script here. Okay, so if we refresh our screen, notice that we get the welcome to JavaScript, right? And it's blocked. It's not doing anything until I let it go. I say okay, and then the rest of the page renders. Okay, so let's see what happened here. So basically what the browser does is that whenever you have a reference to a file, such as script or link, right, or this script over here, right, it executes the JavaScript immediately, right? Immediately it is executed, it's interpreted and run right away in its internal JavaScript engine, okay? And right now we're just doing something silly, right? We're just doing alert, right? Also, another thing is the reason I put it down at the bottom will come apparent later on when we talk about jQuery, okay? All right, so what else can I do here? What else can I do? Well, let's comment that out. Let's leave that out. What I can do also is instead of popping up in alert, I can write to the console, right? Any message I want. I can write, welcome to the JavaScript console. Okay, and if I refresh, notice that I don't see anything. The way you see the console is you go to inspector, and in the inspector, notice that there's a tab called console. See that? If I click on that console, I can see the message I just printed. See that? Let's see, a question on the chat. Adding the script tag at the bottom doesn't make a difference, or it does. So from the point of view of the code, no, it doesn't matter where you put it. The syntactical correctful place to put it is inside of the head. Okay. Nevertheless, it's very common to put all your scripts at the bottom. It's very, very common, okay? And the reason is that, I mean, wherever you put it, the browser will interpret this correctly and it will download the libraries. But putting it last tells the browser that first load the DOM, right? First load all this content into memory. Once you're done and it's in your memory, right? And you don't have to parse anything else, okay? Then load the JavaScript files, okay? And the reason is that these files, right, especially jQuery and some some of the more powerful libraries, they could get pretty big, right? So it could take a while to download them and to improve performance, right, on how long it takes for a rendering to render onto the screen, right? It says I don't want to have to wait for any libraries to download and all that. Right? I just want to pump content as fast as I can to the screen, right? So that's why it's done that way. The other reason is that this course list in a minute, right? We're going to use jQuery, and jQuery wants to be able to manipulate the DOM, right? So if I put it at the beginning here in the head, the DOM doesn't exist yet because it hasn't been parsed yet, right? The browser hasn't yet, right, parsed the HTML. So if I put it up here, right, it could cause that the code is not going to find the DOM and it's going to fail, right? There are ways around that, which I'll show you in a minute. But to get started, right, the simplest thing is to put it all at the bottom. Okay, we'll move it at the top a little later, right? But let me show you what can we do. Okay, excellent. So here we have course list. Perfect. Now let's comment that out. Let's comment that out. Now, what can we do from here? Right. So remember, the intent of this JavaScript file is to be able to manipulate this DOM, right? This over here. I want to be able to programmatically, right, add, remove, edit. Right? I want to render content on the browser, not on the server. On the server, we know how to do that. Well, maybe not, but right, we've done it for decades, right? We've done it with JSPs, with ASPs, with PHP, with Python, with Ruby on Rails, with all these technologies are server side, and they are somewhat out of date. The modern way of rendering is not on the server but on the browser, right? Although rendering on the server is not dead; it's going to be with us quite a while. It's always going to be a combination of the two, right? Because you can't beat rendering content, static content from the server, or even if it's dynamic. You can't beat like a supercomputer generating this HTML, lightning fast, compared to a rinky-dinky laptop running your browser, your JavaScript on your small, tiny little laptop. So these machines are running these server-side pages. They're very, very powerful, and they can pump out code, dynamic HTML pretty fast. Also, they cache their content, so that it can be used for multiple users. Blah blah blah. So typically, it'll be a combination of the two. Right? I'm just not going to be covering that technology because it's somewhat outdated. It's not where the jobs are. Right? The jobs in industry is really front end rendering. That's where the bulk of the industry is right now. Right? So that's what we're going to be focusing on, rendering on the front end as opposed to rendering on the back end. All right. So let's render something on the front end. Okay. What do we want to do? So let's start with something simple. Let's see if we can manipulate what we've got here. Right now, we just have an H1. We got a table with a couple of rows and columns. So let's see if we can do something with this course list. Okay. Well, how would you do that in CSS? Let's see. Let's create here a CSS file. So this would be course list.css. And so in the HTML, we would load it, right? We would say, I'm going to load it. Let's say link, right? And we're going to do rel style sheet, and the href is that it's pointing locally to course list.css. Okay. All right, so once we've got that, how would we manipulate this course list? Well, you would use CSS. You would say, grab me the H1, and I want to change its background color to be red, right? And I want to change its foreground color to be yellow. Okay. And if we render, notice that indeed that works perfectly. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So I want to be able to do that programmatically, right? Using JavaScript as opposed to CSS. So CSS is it's a declarative language. You declare, we are declaring that H1 has these colors. It's declarative. Whereas JavaScript is programmatic, right? It's functional, right? It's object-oriented. And we can say, hey, grab me that H1. I want to change its color. So how do we grab it? So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use JavaScript. Right? We're going to say, hey, JavaScript, grab me. So not JavaScript, jQuery. So grab, jQuery. When we load this jQuery right here, this library, what it does, it runs immediately, just like ours is going to run immediately, right? So it runs immediately, and what it does is it declares a function. It declares a function. The function is called jQuery, like that. J capital Q query. Okay, and the function can take as argument CSS. You can grab a CSS string, right, and you can pass that, and boom, you've got access to that DOM element, right? I grabbed it. I can store it locally on a variable, right? My header. Okay, I can store it locally on my variable, and then I can start manipulating, right? What could I do? Well, let's see. I can do my header, right? I could delete it. I can say remove. If I run it, poof, it's gone. Right, so I have programmatically removed that from the DOM. It's not even in the DOM. I can look at it and see that it's no longer in the DOM. See that? Have div, there's no H1. See that? Notice that if I comment this out, and I re-render this, there it is. See that course list? Course list is there, right? With the styling from the CSS file, right? So course list is there, but if I uncomment that, right, and I refresh my screen, notice that it's gone. It was there just for a second in the DOM when the browser parsed the HTML, but then I programmatically removed it and it's gone. Okay. All right. What else can I do? Well, let's not remove it. Let's do something else. Let's save that. Let's change its content. I can change its content. I can say my header dot. I'm going to change its internal HTML content. I'm going to change it to be, let's see, that right now it says course list, right? So I'm going to say course list editor. Okay, so I'm going to replace its content. So notice that the content right now is course list. I'm going to refresh. Okay, there it is. See that? I have programmatically manipulated the DOM. I have replaced the content, the HTML content of the H1 elements, and there it is. See that? Whatever I do to the DOM gets reflected in the user interface. Okay. What else can I do? I can append. My header. I can append something at the end. I could say maybe dash and add and remove courses. Okay. And so I can append. So what this is going to do is that it's going to first, see that? It first replaced the content with this, but then it added and appended content at the bottom. See that? First I had this string and now I have this string below it. Okay. Or I can prepend. I can say my header. I can prepend content. Okay. I can say, welcome to the, okay, I can prepend. So let's run that. There it is. See that? I put a string before this is the string that I replaced. Then I appended and then I prepended. So I can put content before, after, right? Or in the middle. Make sense? So there's 3 pieces of content that I can add. I can change its look and feel. I can change its CSS using the CSS function. Let's see, is there a question in the chat? And why didn't we need .html for the add remove? You mean for this over here? That? Yeah, no. So I am literally just adding text. We could append also HTML. Yes, we could totally add HTML, and we will do that in a minute. Right now, I'm just showing you trivial examples where you can append or prepend just plain text. But yes, we're going right where you want to go in a minute. Let's see. I can also change the look and feel. I can only change this left-hand side, the HTML. I can also change the right-hand side. I can change the styling. I can change the background color, right? So let's do that. I can say set the background color, to be, it will be blue. Okay. Let's see if I render this, refresh. Notice it's blue. Okay. Notice that what happened here. Notice that this has been overwritten, that the CSS style says it's red, but notice it's crossed out, right? Because I have changed the style right on the elements. See that? It's the .css adds a style element right on the tag, so it overrides anybody else, right? Even if you have your style in your CSS, well, jQuery overrides all that. Okay, makes sense? All right, so this could get pretty lengthy if I'm, editing my header over and over and over. We can string all these together because these functions, this function over here returns an instance of my header, right? So we could string this together like that. See that? Because this function returns this. So this dot, it's as if I would be applying this dot append on the original my header. See that? I can just string these together. So the library is written so that you can apply multiple transformations on the same element, right? And now this could be very long, right? It's hard to read. So we can add new lines on each one. So it's usually proper to add all these new lines so that it's much easier to read. Make sense? Everybody good? All right. Or notice that this my header here, this is my header. Now, if you're not manipulating, if you don't need my header for anything else, it might not even be necessary for you to even declare this variable, right? You could just say jQuery. All right, let's comment that out. You can say just jQuery h1, grab that, just grab it, and then just apply these transformations. Now, obviously, if you need to use my header for something else, then yeah, it makes more sense to just use the variable. Okay, use the variable, but it's up to you, right? What else can you do? You can also make it clickable, so that if you click it, you can call a function to handle that click, right? So if I say I can give it a function, and that function I can then say alert. Header was clicked. Okay. And so if I re-render and I click anywhere in the header, notice that it pops up my alert. Make sense? Now this function, it can be declared here. Notice that this function has no name. So we usually refer to this function as an anonymous function, right? Function that has no name, meaning this function is not meant to be used anywhere else but here. Okay, it's a throwaway function, right? It's not meant to be reused anytime, okay, by anyone else but this click. All right. This function can receive an event, right? This event, let's take out that alert. We can console log the event, see what's in there. We can look at the console. Let's refresh. So if I click on it, there's our event. See that? Notice what's in the event. See this target? See this target over here? Now let's open it up. Let's look at it. Let's go down to target. See this target over here? See if I hover over that H1, see that? It's a reference to the DOM element. It's a reference right to the DOM element. Okay, so I could use that element, you know, if I want to do something with it, right? For instance, I can say, you know, let me look at the target. Let me look at the target. Target. Let's refresh. Click. There's a target. See that? It's the H1. It's the H1 with the background blue, with the content that we added, right? Everything's there. So the actual H1. Now, could we do something with it? Maybe we can manipulate it some more. We can manipulate it some more. So now what this event.target gives you is the raw H1, right? It's the raw H1 DOM element, not the jQuery object that I can manipulate, right? So if I want to manipulate it some more, I need to convert it back into jQuery so I can do some more work on it, right? I can say var, you know, H1. I can say jQuery again, you know, convert it into a jQuery version, so it gives me all the API stuff, right? So that's what jQuery does, right? It grabs the raw H1 and it converts it into a jQuery object that has all these functions, right? These functions were not there for your H1. jQuery added all that really cool functions for each one of the DOM elements. So we're doing the same thing here, right? We're grabbing that H1 again, right, and reconverting it into a jQuery object, okay? And here I can do, I don't know, again, I can say H1 remove, right? So for instance, if I click it, poof, it's gone, right? And then I can't click it anymore because it's gone. I need to refresh. All right, there it is. Or maybe I can, instead of remove, I can change its color, right, to be the background color, background color, right, to be green. Okay, so if I refresh and I click on it, notice that the background turns green, right? Everybody good? Everybody still with me? All right, that was quite a lot. All right, let's give you some more. All right, let's leave the header alone for a second. All right, let's keep going. What we want to be able to do, right? We want to be able to do is the following, right? We want to be able to, you know, we were able to just add content here, blah blah blah. Okay, that's fine. But what we really want to do is generate this list over here dynamically, right? Not static like we have now, right? We want to make this dynamic. So how do we do that? Well, what we could do is what we could grab we can, just like we appended, right? We appended text. Right? We want to append something more sophisticated, right? We want to do the following. We want to grab this table body here. There's a table body right there, right? The table body. We want to grab the table body, and then we want to append a whole DOM element, a whole table row, not just text, right? That's too dumb, right? We want to append an entire table row to the body. So we know how to do that. Well, we can grab the body. Now let's practice now. Instead of, so we know how to grab something by the name of the elements. Yes. So we could do, you know, grab this T body by T body, right? But let's make something. We can grab it also by its ID, right? So if I give it this ID, if I give it a unique identifier, right? I call it you know, table body. Right, the table or table rows, call it table rows, all right? I can grab it by its ID instead of the name of the elements, right? So let's do that. Let's practice this. So I'm going to say var table rows, okay? And I'm going to grab it, jQuery, like that. And I'm going to grab it by its ID. Now, in CSS, the way we refer to elements by its ID, it's by a hash, right? So there it is, table rows. There it is. See that? And I can change, you know, we can change its background color to be cyan, right? Something really visible. There it is. See that? I can change the background color of the entire table body, right, by referring to it by its ID. So hash means ID. Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to go back to jQuery. I'm going to grab it by its ID. So it's table rows. There it is. Okay. So what do I want to do? I could do all sorts of things, right? I can say table rows. Obviously, I can remove it, but that's not what I want to do. Right? I can just remove the entire table rows. I don't want to do that. Okay. What I want to do is that I want to append to it, right? So let's see how we can append. Right, so we can use the append that we saw earlier. Okay, so what do we want to append? An entire table row. So this, right? We want to do this row right there. All right, so let's copy that. Let's head over there. So this is going to be a string. I'm going to paste it here. So look what's going to happen. Right, if I paste it there, right, it's going to look pretty ugly. But basically, it's what? It's just strings concatenated one after another, using the plus sign, right? And let's see if that works. Right, so let's refresh. And I think this last one was added. I'm not sure. To make sure that it did work, let's change it to something, 1, 2, 3, like that. All right. So let's refresh. There it is. So this last one was dynamically added to the end of the table rows. Okay, everybody good? Everybody still with me? All right, so this is very hard to read, right? This is really, really hard to read. So JavaScript 6, right, the latest version of JavaScript added a syntax specifically to make this easier to read. Okay, so I'm going to remove that. And instead of using double quotes, we're going to use the backticks. Right? So the backticks allow you to paste long pieces of text. And that looks even worse. All right. So what's happening here is that my IDE does not recognize ES6. All right. So I'm going to go to my preferences, my IDE preferences. And I'm going to say languages. I'm going to go to JavaScript. I'm going to say that don't use the default 5.1. Use ECMA 6. Okay. I'm going to say okay. And now my browser understands this syntax. Okay. All right, so let's change this to be CS 1111. And instead of append, I'm going to say prepend. All right, so let's run this. There it is, CS 1111 at the top. Everybody good? All right, excellent. Now this could be a function, right? That adds a single. Actually, this could be in a loop, right? So that we can add a whole bunch of these guys, right? So let's do that. Let's put this inside of a loop, right? So we're going to say for var I equals 0, and then I less than 10, I plus plus. Okay, and we're going to put this in a loop. Right, and we're going to put it in a loop right there. Okay, and let's tab this. There we go. Right, so if we refresh, notice that we have added 10 of these. See that? There's 10 of those. Right, and maybe maybe we can put this in a function, right? And the function might be a function. Render courses, right? And it's a function like this that looks something like that, right? Oops. And then we can call the function down here, render courses. If I call it, there we go. So it renders 10 courses. All right, very good. All right, excellent. How about instead of rendering some static courses, we can have an array of courses, right? So this could be maybe a var of courses that has an array of objects, right? And in JavaScript, we use what it's called JSON. JSON is the notation. It's a JavaScript object notation, right? Which uses these special characters, square brackets for arrays and curly brackets for objects, and colons for name value pairs, right? So an object in JavaScript is basically just a collection of name value pairs, right? Property value, property value, property value, right? So for instance, I might say a course has a title, right? And the title is CS4550. What else do we want? We want the section. Section is section 02. What else we got? Seats. Seats is 23 seats. And semester is spring. Okay. Oh, sorry. This is seats, the property, and this is the semester. All right. And I can copy this multiple times. And this is maybe 4550, and this is, you know, whatever. Oops. $610, a real one, and 5200, right? And different sections here, right? So 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this may be 34, 45, 56, and 67. Okay. And then what we could do is that render courses might take as arguments a list, an array of courses, right? That we can pass here as an argument, right? Courses. All right. Yeah, right now it still just does the hard-coded 10, right? But what we could do is, instead of having this hard-coded title here, we could take it from the course object, right? So we can grab a course from the array courses sub I, okay? And instead of iterating over 10, we can say courses.length. Now that we have a course, we can grab the title for each one of these, right? So how do we embed a variable inside of a string, right? So we're going to use the following syntax, right? Which is very familiar if you've done any Unix or path manipulation, things like that, right? Basically, the syntax is that it's $, and then curly brackets. And then you can put in here a whole expression, right? Including just a variable. So here you can say course and then title. There we go. See that? So if I refresh, there we go. See that? 5200, 5610, 36. So all these are the courses that I had earlier. So I don't really need all this static stuff anymore. I'm just going to comment that out. So I'm going to go back here. I'm just going to comment out all this. I don't need it anymore. I'll leave it there just so that we remember that it was there at some point. But now I only have the dynamic part, right? Sections. I thought I had sections. Oh, right. We never edited the sections here. So this would be what? $, and this would be course.section, right? And this would be seats. So this course.seats, right? And this is semester, right? So this is $, course.semester, right? So if I render, all these are dynamic. See that? Very good. All right. So how about being able to create a brand new course? So if we need to create a course, right, we would need to have like an event handler on a button that we can click, right? So let's do that, right? So let's grab a reference to that button, right? So I believe the button is called what? Let's see. Where's the create button? Where is it? There is that create button. See that? Right. Again, we can grab a reference to it if we want to use an ID. Okay, we could do that. Or let me show you. We can also grab it by class. Right? If we give it a class, and this is the create button. Right. And again, if we're creating a class of our own, it's a good practice to prepend it with some acronym. Right. Good acronyms, or maybe could be web dev, or could be NEU for the university. Or for me, my initials are JGA. That might be also a good practice, right? So that you can distinguish your classes from somebody else's classes. Okay. All right. So for instance, how do I grab this? How do I refer to it? Well, in CSS, I use what? Dot. Right. Dot allows me to refer to classes. Right, and what can I do here? I can maybe change the foreground color I can change the background color and make it green. Okay, let's see. There it is. So I've made it green. Perfect. Excellent. And I can change the foreground to be white, maybe. So color white. Okay, perfect. Excellent. So I know how to grab this using CSS, right? With a dot. Well, same thing will be with JavaScript, with jQuery, right? So if I want to grab the create button, I use jQuery. Now jQuery, it's way too many letters to type, right? So there's an alias that we can use that instead of J capital Q query, you can use the alias $. $sign is an alias for the jQuery function. Let's see, there's a question in the chat. Any reason why we use class instead of ID this time? So personally, I would always use classes and I would never use IDs, right? IDs, so IDs are restrictive in the sense that you can only use this ID, in one place only, right? And never again in this HTML page, okay? Well, you can use classes for that too, right? You can change this to be a class as long as you know that you can't use that class ever again, and you know that logically you should only have one of these in your page. Well, you can do that with classes too, right? So there's no reason to use IDs. Although some folks prefer to use IDs, it's only a preferential choice. Right? I think it's a good practice to use classes only. No need for using IDs. All right, so let's grab this. So dot, and also the other reason that I'm showing you why we're using classes or IDs, I'm showing you the how. Okay, that you can use. That you can use the name of the element, you can use the IDs of the elements, or you can use the classes, right? So 3 different ways to refer to an element, okay? Now, yeah, we had not talked about why would you do it, right? Again, classes, I think, are better. They, if you want to use them as unique, well, you just make sure that you only use it once. So anything that you can do with IDs, you can also use with classes. Right, and muddling the language of doing it one way, another way, it's not. Just use classes. I think it makes it much more simpler. Anyway, so there it is. So I have the button, right, and the button. I can now do a click event on it. Right, I can give it a function. You can give it a function, and this is going to alert create course. All right, let's see if it works. Let's refresh. If I click here, notice it says create course. Perfect. All right, so how do we create a course? So what we're going to do to create a course, basically, we just need to append an object into the courses, right? A brand new object, and then we just have to pass that new array into the renders courses. That's all we need to do. Let's do that. All right, so let's create a brand new course, right? I don't want to talk about ES6 just yet. So var, I'm going to say new course, and I'm going to create here an object that is going to have the structure of a course, right? It's going to have a title. So there's going to be new course. It's going to have the section, right? So this section is new section. And there's going to be seats, right? 12, and it's going to have semester. It's going to have spring. Okay, so I have the new object. There it is. It was created. So this is just like you have a literal string or a literal integer. This is a literal integer, right? And this is a literal string. Well, what is this? This is a literal object. Okay. And so now I can just append it to the courses array. Right? I can push into the array this new course, right? And then I can ask to render the courses, and I can pass the courses. See that? All right, let's try it out. So if I click on create, there it is. See that? It adds the new courses. Ooh, what happened here? Look at that. Look at all those. It got bigger than you expected. Yeah. Let's see what. Let's see if you can figure out why. Notice here we have the original list, and now we have the original list plus new course. See that? What if we do it again? Create course. Look what happened. So we have the old list plus now we have appended this over here. Why? Well, because the array is fine, right? But what's happening here is that we just keep prepending, but we never clear the previous content of the table row, right? Right. So in the render courses, what we should do, rows before we prepend, we should empty. Just throw away all the content inside the table rows, which contains the old rows. And then, actually, no, wait a minute. I think, no, that won't work. I think we should do right here. Before we iterate, we're going to empty. There we go. Let's try it out. Okay, now it works. Now it works. See that? Perfect. Excellent. Yeah. So the next thing might be to delete these courses, right? So let's see how can we delete the course, right? So what we're going to do is that these delete courses, need to be bound, but there's a whole bunch of them. Not just one, right? There's a whole bunch of them. So how do we do that? Right. So what we're going to do is that after we render after we are done rendering, right there, that's the end of the render. We know that they're going to have all these delete buttons, right? So we need to be able to refer to these guys, right? So how do we refer them? We're going to add a class here, and we'll call it maybe new-delete button, right? Notice that I'm not being consistent on this acronym, right? I'm going to leave it up to you, but good acronyms should be either your what do you call them? Your initials, right? Web dev or NEU. Those are really good acronyms. Okay, so we're gonna bind this, right? We're gonna say, wait, where's the end of this loop? Here's the end of the loop, right? We're gonna grab this NEU button, right? Delete button. So we're gonna grab it by class. So this is gonna grab all of them, right? And what's gonna say, I'm gonna bind a click event. Oops, I'm gonna bind a click event that is gonna say alert, delete course. Delete this course. Okay, so let's see. If we click on delete, notice that there's the alert, right? Now, which one do we delete? How do we know which one we're going to delete? Well, there's a couple ways that we can do this, right? We could add here an identifier. I'm going to use an ID here, and I'm going to dynamically say the number, right? The unique identifier. I'm going to use the iteration, the I here, to uniquely identify this button. So I can know which one do you want to remove. Is it the third one, the sixth one, the seventh one? Which one? So I'm going to bind here, right? I'm going to put here the I, right? Okay. And also remember that this click can receive an event. You can click an event and we can see what's in there, right? We can say console log the event, right? Let's see if we can inspect, and we go to console and we click on delete. There it is, right? So there's our button with number 4, right? Or we click on this one, click on that, and there's our button number 1, right? I can look at the target. I can say .target, right? And I can see that that's the target. That's the button with number 4, right? That's the button with number 2. So I can grab the button, right? Var the button by wrapping this with jQuery, which is going to give us a whole bunch of functions that we can do something with it, right? Okay. For instance, one of the functions is that we can grab this attribute, the ID class. We can grab the attribute, we can grab the class, we can grab the name, we can do everything, right? So button, I can grab the attribute called ID, and I can paste it inside a local variable. Now I know the ID. What's the ID? It's the value that I had added there. Let's see. Let's do a console log ID. All right, let's click on this. There it is. See, number 3. And then number 0, right? Or number 4. See that? I know that you're clicking on which one. So what do I need to do? I need to splice and remove that element from the array. Right? So I can look at the original courses and I can splice out. I can splice out at location ID. I'm going to remove one element. Okay. Once I've done that, I can re-render the courses, which now it will not include that particular object. Right? Let's look at this. So now I can remove. There we go. See that? I can remove the elements. I can create new ones, and I can remove old ones. Okay. All right. Okay, that's all I had for you today. Next time we meet, right, we're going to clean this up. Right now, it's all over the place, right? It's not very well organized, right? We're going to clean it up, and we're also going to connect it to the server, right? So that we're going to be able to communicate and send all this data to the server to make these changes permanent. Right now, all these changes are not permanent, right? They're static, right? That if we create new ones, we don't even have the form, right? So we'll work on that next time we meet. All right, awesome. Any questions? Can students in Seattle have a delayed due time? Huh. Okay. How can we do that? That's what, 3 hours later? Okay. I don't have an easy way of doing that, so I'm just going to give everybody 3 more hours. All right. Oh, to add a tag is as follows. If you go to jQuery, I mean not jQuery, you go to your Git. If you go to your Git and you go to a branch and you go to tags, see right here, tags, and you can create a new release. And that release, you can give it a name. And yes, a name that we're asking you to use is assignment 1. And you say just publish the release. Okay, and that's it. So now TAs will know that they should grade that, your last commit that you made, right? It'll have a name, assignment number 1. Okay. No. Yeah, I'm sorry for the confusion this time around. If you haven't deployed it to Heroku, you will not be penalized. My intention was that everybody would have had it deployed, but I guess not. How can we delete the previous tag? You can just create a new tag. You can say 1.1 or 1.2, 1.3. The last tag will be graded, and we will ignore previous tags. All right, everybody. Thank you. Good night.